So hello everybody. I've been looking in at the sessions so far today, especially Paolo's session, and thinking about this awesome stuff that you can be adding into your enterprises. And what I'm going to be talking about is the fact that you've got awesome new stuff. You've got amazing things. I mean, everyone feels like this if you're in IT, but right now there's amazing stuff happening. But how do we join it up to the thing that's already in the room, which is the legacy systems? So Flow Software, I'll give you a flavour of who we are. We're an integration and middleware services provider. We integrate applications and automate business processes. We've got about 500 customers in Australasia, and there's 150 different business applications we talk to. That means that some of you are going to be at a much bigger scale than what we do day to day, but I can tell you that even some very big names, and if you look there, there's a lot of brands there that you might recognise who are our customers across the two countries. Even some very big names in an industry vertical will have a very tiny or a very outdated or a very inefficient business process. So that's a classical understanding from the 50s or the 60s about how over time a business should continue to improve its efficiency. It's going to maintain its competitive advantage in its industry vertical and against its competitors by constantly, reducing the cost per unit and producing more in the same amount of time. Unfortunately, for most businesses, it isn't that beautifully smooth. So this is you can decide how many years are running across the bottom there. That could be decades or it could be years. But we start out with the business. We've got these big stepwise changes that are happening to the business. Okay? And each one of those stepwise changes, this big new system that gets implemented, represents a legacy system as you move further on down the curve. One of the things that it's important to think about that is we're aiming for this operational efficiency, and all our competitors are doing exactly the same thing. Okay? But we can't always stick on the curve. Sometimes we're going to go out past it. And if you look at that, what you're trying to achieve there in all your different spheres of endeavour, think about how much you could have optimised in year one if you could have done it with hindsight. Back in year one, there was all this opportunity for optimisation and improvement. But the trouble is we are always stuck somewhere on the curve where that's the past, and we need to keep going and finding more. So operational efficiency, reducing cost or increasing profit ratio, reducing time to delivery or increasing throughput. And in an integration and automation scenario, we're going to focus on removing manual effort, refactoring existing processes, and standardising or regularising process. Okay, so what is a legacy system? Well, I think legacy systems have a bunch of different parts, and they're not all just IT. Okay? So it's an existing system. It could be a very old system. It could be a 2-year-old system. But it could be, often when we think, especially for the very big legacy systems, it's something that may not have been renewed or maintained. It may be running beautifully, doing exactly what it should, but it may not have kept up with other requirements. Now, legacy systems can be a pejorative term. If you talk to somebody in IT, especially a new graduate or a vendor, and you say legacy system, they think, yeah, legacy systems, things that are going to be replaced. But your legacy systems are a rich source of data and valuable business process. They represent a big capital investment that you need to run for a long time to get return on that investment. So why do we keep our legacy systems? Well, inertia. Maybe they're good enough. Maybe there's other things we need to worry about right now. There are things that could be higher priority. My daughter dove into the pool over Christmas and smashed one of her teeth. We had to find an emergency dentist. Luckily, the emergency dentist we found had a very up-to-date surgery. Beautiful drills, beautiful tools. I had complete confidence that he was going to sort my daughter's problem out. But his CRM was a set of paper index cards. He literally got a pen and wrote her name on a piece of paper and put it into a file. Okay? So he had a legacy system that he didn't need to improve yet. It was good enough for doing exactly what it was doing. So there's cost. If you think about those big stepwise changes we saw before, there's a big effort to implement a huge new system, and there's a big effort to get off that system. And there's people, there's retraining costs. There's very often we will go and talk to a business who's got an existing running system. They may no longer even know why they run the system the way they do. So why is this a problem? Well, there's lots of reasons. But the main thing that I'm looking at today is that a legacy system can be a significant block to improving operational efficiency. You'll often hear people talk about, the need to be agile and the need to be iterative, and that's completely true. And I'm going to talk about how that relates to what integration does. But you can't be agile and iterative on an ERP necessarily. There might be individual processes you can improve, but the SAP is this big beast that you can't just all of a sudden turn into something much more agile. So there's two things down the bottom there that I think are really important to think about for your integration or your business process improvement. The first one is the received knowledge. The reason we care about received knowledge is that lack of understanding in the organisation about how and why the current processes run as they do is key to knowing about how you're going to improve those processes and how you're going to join them to other systems and where you're going to look for new sources of efficiency to bring in. The other thing is that you really need shared understanding, okay? You've got people, you've got technology, you've got people driving technology, your IT department and your users, your customers, your suppliers. If you don't have a shared understanding of the process, you won't build a coherent process together. You certainly are unlikely to build a better process, and your project might just fail. There are plenty of IT initiatives out there where you have to stop and try again. And from our perspective, doing integration, that's usually because you haven't lined up that shared understanding between the parties. So there were these two linguists in the 50s, Sapir and Worf, and they had a theory, and there's a lot of research that's been done around this theory, that the structure of language limits our thoughts, okay? And it structures our process for acquiring new knowledge and our understanding of thought, experience, and sensation. Well, how does that relate to integration? The truth is, the solutions and optimization options that people consider are generally limited to what they have done before. The other thing is that people working around any business process, that's technical people or operational people, to be honest, they end up in a cargo cult mentality. Okay? Especially if you've got a system that's been there for a long time, it becomes the way that work is done. But when we come to do integration, when we look at that, how are we going to keep trying to trend back towards that curve of finding competitive advantage by optimizing our processes and finding new efficiency, okay? That's when we know that we need to have an extension of the understanding of what's going on. We need to know why these things happen. Okay, so you're tasked to make operations more efficient. And when that happens, there's a lot going on. So what are the most common pitfalls that we see when you're starting to do this with a legacy system? First of all, you can easily get sucked into writing encyclopedic documentation of existing processes. That's not integration. That's ISO 9000. Another pitfall, being unable to separate a technical challenge from a people challenge. So I often go and run scoping workshops and analysis workshops with our customers, and you'll suddenly hit a wall where somebody says, but this is how the payment reconciliation works. You're like, okay. Do I need to talk to the person who's responsible for that function and understand what needs to happen? Or do I need to deal with a technical problem? Is there a system reason why this can't happen? Another big pitfall, and I think this is something that you've heard in the other talks so far today, is that you need to be able to break your overall integrated end-to-end state into small deliverables. Okay? And when I'm going to talk a bit further, you'll see that there's two really distinct sets of deliverables that I'm looking for when I want to start putting integration around legacy systems. One of them is about capability. So how can I, when I finally find an interface to a system, how can I make it so that that's reusable going forward? And I don't mean that you can just use exactly that same interface, but we've built a capability, either a technical capability or a people capability or both together, so that next time we want to do the same thing, they go, no worries, I can implement that web service for you. no worries. I know how the data loading layer in this system works. Okay. So what is integration? This could be integration. This is Jeffrey. He does data integration. He gets a whole lot of paper stuff and he types it in. If he's really lucky, he's got a swivel chair so he can get between the two systems that he's typing data into. But what we think integration is automating the exchange of data between systems, creating business processes that cross over system boundaries. And those system boundaries could be people system boundaries or technical system boundaries. And for you, what integration offers is the chance to find a technical change catalyst. Okay? A lot of the businesses that I go and talk to every day have very siloed operations. Once you get to a certain scale, it's very hard for different people to understand end-to-end the business process or what the department next door does. Okay? So integration should be something that starts to unlock boundaries. Now we think, I work for a middleware company, we think that middleware is a solution to doing that. Middleware is software that's designed to come in and start unlocking things. It lets you unlock your legacy systems and either automate them directly or connect them to new systems which will automate operations. Okay? So what's automation? Well, it could be a new document management system. Automation is replacing a mechanical procedure. Okay? Something people do by rote or following well-defined rules with an equivalent electronic process. It could be triggering steps in a business process in multiple systems based on events that are recorded electronically. What it should be, okay? I'm all about that curve. What it should be is a technical source of operational efficiency. All right? So remember, I think that integration is the catalyst for starting the journey. It's about breaking through barriers and being able to join things together and getting the capability to join things together. Okay? But then it's not enough to just have the ability to talk to web services. That does nothing until you find the system that you want to plug in that delivers your operational efficiency by bringing in a new way of working. Okay. One of the things to think about is, are you using your integration and your automation to solve a primarily technical problem around a legacy system? So you could be looking for things like EDI or using data interchange middleware or web services enablement. Now, for the IT people in the room, you might say, or people in banks, you might be going, well, we've done that for decades, okay? But the point is that you need to look for common technical solutions. EDI is decades old. It started with people wanting to optimise how freight containers moved around the US on the train networks. If you look at some of the list of standard EDI documents, I'd love a chance to go and talk about rolling stock, okay? But EDI is still alive today. Okay? We all have external trading partners where we could optimise the business process across enterprises, and both enterprises could get some operational efficiency from that if we were electronically exchanging documents between us. Are you using your integration to solve a business process problem around a legacy system? So one of the things that can happen to a business now is something does explode at the front end of your business, and explode in a good way. Maybe you're suddenly swamped by the number of online orders you're taking. Maybe you're some optimization in the sales process or how you communicate with your customers just means you're getting a lot more happening. So online transactions are driven differently to traditional transactions. It's really important when you're thinking about this, it's not just about volume, but about when a process flips from being individually important to important in the aggregate. We see a lot of businesses now that are wanting to move from being a wholesaler, sitting behind other people in the value chain, and start talking directly to consumer customers. So in the past, it was easy for those businesses to know what the important orders were. Either you were a very significant customer, or it was a very big order. And otherwise, if it was a bit slow, we could probably get away with it. But when you change that and you're delivering $1 million of business not from 2 orders, but from 50,000 orders, the aggregate matters more. You can't take the same amount of time to process that. Each one of those consumer customers may be the one who goes onto Twitter or Facebook and starts to complain about what's going on. So you need to think about in your automation that we're in the back office, but the front office is struggling or is desperate to try and increase the volume that they're doing so that they can do more. So speed and cost optimization matters as volume increases. But we need to look for consequent load in the systems further down. If you're working with a third party for fulfillment or warehouse management, what are you going to do when, the Vogue sale causes your product sales to go through the roof and in 2 hours you do 2 months worth of sales? We can make some of our electronic systems handle that all the way into the ERP system. Now it's starting to send the picks to the warehouse. Who's taking care of monitoring and seeing what the warehouse is doing and looking at that as part of your integrated process for what's happening? So we've got these legacy systems. We're trying to integrate and automate around them to find increased operational efficiency. To allow for automation to happen, we need to make integration possible. Okay? And this is a step-by-step process. Identify the process you want to improve or the systems which hold the data you need to unlock. Ask the technical questions. Can I get data in and out of this system? And usually the answer is yes. It could be, if it's a recent system, there'll be web services. Maybe it's file exchange, and it's like the reverse descent of man as you go down from JSON to XML to text files to some IBM mainframe format. Maybe we need to look at direct database access. Maybe we need to challenge some assumptions about when data needs to go through the application business layers and when it doesn't. Maybe there's a programming API, even if it's a legacy API. For Windows applications from the 90s and 2000s, it was very common for there to be COM objects and libraries and things that we needed to automate. Then you need to ask the people questions. Because remember, this integration, my business thinks it's really important. It's what we do. But it's just the connector to access the automation. All right? So ask the people, what can you do for little or no effort? What have you done before? And this is probably going to be a different conversation with each of the IT systems that you're trying to join together. So then you need to identify where an integration tool could facilitate. Sometimes it's a solvent, sometimes it's what's going to dissolve barriers and start enabling things. Sometimes it's the glue, sometimes it's what's going to let you stick disparate things together. Do we need to enable by providing an interface or a different type of interface to a legacy system? Do we need to orchestrate? Do we need to take a bunch of passive legacy systems and bring them into a single process? They may all have different ways of being automated, and we want something that's going to unify them into the business process. Do you need to couple them together? Different generations with different generations of systems or different types of interface? Do we need to translate so that different systems can work together, each within their own paradigm? Now, that difference in paradigm could be technical. Often people get really caught up on the fact that, how am I going to get my mainframe to talk to my new SaaS cloud platform? The thing that you need that is just as important, in fact, probably more important to think about is how does this system think about the business process that it's building compared to my new platform? A really common example that I see of this is when somebody decides to take the warehouse management function out of their unified ERP. Remember on my first diagram, that happened sometimes in the 80s that we have this unified ERP to run everything, and they outsource that to a 3PL. That's a third-party logistics provider. Or they implement a best-of-breed warehouse management system. The warehouse management system thinks about stock locations and stock statuses in a much more detailed way than the ERP. Okay? There may be completely different ideas in the two systems about what's going on. And there are other things that the ERP thinks about, different types of orders, for example, which from the warehouse's perspective is just, well, you asked me to pick something and ship it. So we need to focus on how we're going to translate between those systems in the middle layer. The last thing that's very important is to think about how are your staff going to be able to monitor and trace these new processes. So when you had a team sitting there processing documents manually, you were probably able to stick your head around the corner and say, hey guys, where's order 56 at? And somebody would go, oh, I'm just doing the data entry right now. Okay? So you had a monitoring system. You could find out what was going on. When you move to an automated process, especially a process which generally runs very fast, you're going to need a way to trace in detail the exceptions that occur. So you need to build that in to your integration layer. And if you're orchestrating a process that's across multiple systems and has multiple steps, you're going to need to have a way to find out what each of those systems thinks about the current status of that transaction. Because otherwise, every time you have an exception, your team won't know which system to look at first. Paul Sappho said that when he talks to a team member about how they deliver these new ideas and how they create better business processes, you need to have strong opinions which are weakly held. Okay. Most of you will tell me that IT is never short of strong opinions. Okay. It's certainly my experience. But the reason they need to be weakly held is that you need to be able to have a plan. You need to be able to have an idea of what you're going to be doing, because that's what's going to motivate people. That's what's going to bring them on the journey. But you need to be open to the fact that the pattern that worked exactly last time doesn't work this time. You need to be open to the fact that you're going to hit a technical or a people reason that says to you, actually, we have to make a change. You need those strong opinions because that's how you're going to bring in the previous patterns around integration or around automation that you know you're going to be able to reuse. One of the reasons that we talk to consultants is that we want to buy in somebody's previous experience and use their strong opinions to motivate and to deliver optimization. These are really simple examples. These I would call proof of concept examples. This is one of my customers in Sydney. They're a 100-year-old business. Okay? They are very, very customer focused, and they have a customer team there who's answering phone calls all day from their customers. Okay? They've just put in a new e-commerce website, and what they actually needed to unlock some optimization and some operational efficiency was just for somebody to be able to log into the website, check their credit balance, download a statement, review the shipping status of an order. Okay? For people using current systems or current business process, that sounds obvious. Of course, that's what you want to do. That's what Amazon lets you do. But for somebody with a legacy system and a legacy business process, that took them through a big optimization. Another example here. So this is an example that we often see where somebody starts to have business success. Okay, they start to get a lot more orders, and these might not be online orders. These might be wholesale orders. In my example, I might talk about the fact that these guys have got a honey-based product that reverses the aging process. Obviously, they're getting orders from all over the world. Okay, their data entry team can't keep up, so identify what's going to be the thing to unlock that. Find an interface into the ERP to load those orders in. Iterate on it. There's hundreds of thousands of formats of order out there. Find the ones that your customers are using. Start having that basic process in and adding new ones of exactly the same cookie cutter methodology. Okay, I just wanted to come back to this overarching idea about optimization. So, how do we maintain our competitive advantage and operational efficiency in the long term? Legacy systems, technology and people make you comparatively less efficient over time. I'm thinking about the times on this diagram when we head out past that curve. Okay, so your competitors, or the industry in general, is still trying to follow that curve and you're stuck out on this ledge. You can't replace systems the whole time though. We can't do these giant leaps of system replacement. Okay? We did them, but they might be years or decades apart. So you need to use integration and you need to use automation to smooth that. You need to unlock those little interfaces so that something as trivial as being able to pull some data with a SQL query or push data in through a file-based interface can allow that legacy system to join into a new chance for process optimization and automation. All right. So as I tell the Cub Scouts, you can make it to the end, one step at a time.